Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith. We are at the NEPM Asparagus Festival. How is everybody doing?
How's everybody doing? That's what you do when you do a live show.
I know.
And then when you say, I couldn't hear you, even though we could. But we want to hear you louder. How's everybody doing?
Yeah,
That's more
why he's
like
here.
it. I'm Monte Belmonte. Hadley Asparagus. Hadley grass. Arguably the 413's most famous agricultural offering.
Some call us the asparagus capital of the world. The late Queen of England for many years requested Hadley asparagus to be served at her annual spring feast.
And given the effects the #1 asparagus in the world has on the human body, this is where we get the term the royal weed.
It is not. It's not where we get that from. Coming up, a Wine Thunderdome live, maybe a Pizza Quest. But let's start off with a song from the artist who just finished up their set here, Latin Grammy Award winner, making his home here in Western Mass, Mr. G and the Global Citizen Ensemble.
Welcome, Mr. G.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
We've also got Marcos Carreras,
Yes.
who was on the show a couple weeks ago.
Hola.
Hola. And who are the students you have with you, Marcos?
We have 3 of our amazing 6th grade singers. We have Mia Diaz, Anais Canela, and Cadence Sharp.
From which school?
From the one and only Springfield Conservatory of the Arts Magnet School in Springfield in the 413.
The 413. Well, let's hear a song from Mr. G and the Global Citizens Ensemble.
So this is a song called How Many Squirrels Are in the World? It just came out as a picture book from Penguin Random House.
As opposed to the Random Penguin House, which is at the Lupa Zoo.
Yes,
Always
exactly. Y'all need to get your hands in the air and get ready to clap. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, go! How many squirrels are in the world? How many squirrels are in the world? I'm looking up, I'm looking down, I'm counting squirrels all over town. I see 1 + 2 makes 3. Wish I could join them in that tray. Now I see 4 for the sycamore. Is that 5? 5 a beehive. How many squirrels are in the world? How many squirrels are in the world? I'm looking high and I'm looking low. I'm counting squirrels everywhere I go. Climbing high, there's 6 and 7. Could that be 8? Along the gate, do I see 9? Or is that 10? Oh me, oh my, will it ever end? How many squirrels are in the world? How many squirrels are in the world? A group of squirrels is called a scurry. They move so fast, my eyes get blurry. Climbing this high is getting hard, so I'll just stick with my backyard. There are lots of squirrels in our oak tree. Can you count along with me? How many squirrels are in the world? How many squirrels are in the world? I thought we'd finished, but here come others. Lots of sisters, lots of brothers. How many squirrels are in the world? How many squirrels are in the world? I'm counting squirrels everywhere I go. And someday soon I'm gonna know how many squirrels are in the world. How many squirrels are in the world? Thank you so much.
Can you have a title track for a book? Because if there was, that would be the title track for Mr. G's book. How many squirrels are in the world? Is the answer at the end of this book? How many squirrels are there?
You have to get the book and then engage in some scientific inquiry and then report back.
Well, now, I happen to have the book right here, so that's very exciting. Thank you so much, Mr. G and Marcos Carreras. and members of the Global Citizens Ensemble.
Mil gracias.
All right,
Mil
thanks for the
gracias.
gracias, amigos.
De nada.
De nada.
It was, this is the Signature Sound stage at the NEPM Asparagus Festival, and there's more great music if you're here live on Saturday, as you all are, right?
Yeah, you're alive.
If you're listening on Monday, too bad. Sorry. But joining us,
If you're listening on Monday, you just had the great music. There you go.
you had the great music, and you can go listen to great music on your own. But we're really glad to be here at the NEPM Asparagus Festival, and this is a celebration of all things agricultural. And joining us this afternoon for the broadcast are USDA Rural Development State Director for Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, Scott Soars. Scott was,
Thank you.
not for the USDA. Federal dollars at work.
Yes.
Scott was previously appointed to the role by President Obama and was reappointed after a mysterious 4-ish year gap by President Biden. Soars began his career at the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, where he held a variety of leadership positions. Through his work as executive director of the U.S. Cranberry Marketing Committee, Soars worked with the cranberry industry across the U.S. In his spare time, Scott shucks, which is the name of his oyster farming and catering business. Thank you so much for joining us, Scott Soars.
Great to be here. Thanks, Monte.
We're not disappointed that you didn't bring oysters. It's totally
little bit
fine.
disappointed.
We're also joined by the Commissioner of the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, Ashley Randale. Ashley is a fifth-generation dairy farmer who was sworn in as the 21st commissioner by Governor Maura Healey back in March. She is the first woman to lead the department and assumed the role after having served as deputy commissioner since 2018.
Welcome,
joining
Ashley
us.
Randale.
Thank you, Cleese and Monty.
And we're joined by some other guy,
Our Thursday friend.
Congressman Jim McGovern. We have a regular segment with him on the show on Thursdays, McGoverning with McGovern. Congressman McGovern represents the 2nd District of Massachusetts in the House of Representatives. He's a vocal advocate for his district and a global leader working to end hunger, protect human rights, and promote peace. He said on the show on Thursday that he likes his asparagus with a little bit of olive oil and salt and pepper on the grill, but then you also said, and this, my family took note of this, you said flamin' hot,
Right.
and we were expecting you to say Cheetos or something. Were you meaning spicy chili crisps?
Yes, absolutely.
Like
That-
Lao Ganma?
Yeah, Lao Ganma.
Like
It's
the
like a red
chili
jar.
oil?
Yeah,
That stuff,
absolutely.
get it.
The hotter the
It
better.
is the best. It's good on everything, including ice cream.
You can get the big jar at Mom's in Amherst, or go to Trans World Market right down the street on
here.
Route 9 and get it. Thank you for joining us, Congressman Jim McGovern.
Thank you.
And our co-host in honor from Plainfield Farm right here in Hadley, Wally Czajkowski.
Wally Czajkowski. I try not to play favorites when it comes to farmers, but you're right up there, Wally Czajkowski. And you are the person who is putting the asparagus in the NEPM Asparagus Festival. But one thing that I love most about you, Wally, is how you pronounce this, our favorite crop of the day. Please tell us what you call this vegetable.
It's asparagus.
Asparagus. Now, I've asked other members of the Czajkowski family if they also call it that. They tell me no, but I have loved forever, even when I did a television piece with you for Connecting Point years ago, the way that you say the vegetable. Say it again.
Asparagus.
Asparagus.
It's beautiful.
It is. Now, Wally, how has the asparagus crop been in 2023?
It's been a pretty good year here. We didn't get the frost that other people got. We've had to irrigate a lot, but overall, I can't complain. It started really slow. May was really a good month. Now it's slowing down, but the rain we got last night will help
That's great.
because asparagus is almost all water.
Right. Aren't we all?
Exactly. Exactly.
The frost didn't agree with me either, but the frost that happened a couple weeks ago was disastrous by some accounts. Ashley Randale, who is the new commissioner of the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources, I've been hearing from my farmer friends some variety in how devastating that frost was, but in some cases it was tragic, losing up to 80 to 90% of what they may have to offer. What are you hearing from farmers, particularly here in the 4 counties of Western Mass, about how that frost affected them?
Well, along the same lines, Monty, we've been talking to our farmer friends at the department, and the impacts from the frost were really devastating. Some farms lost their entire crop for the season. There's some local farms that lost their blueberry crop. which is really rare this time of year. Apple orchards were impacted after the February 4th impacts of peaches being lost and a lot of stone fruits. So across the board and across the state, farms are having a shocking start to the season with that freeze.
And this comes on the heels of another climate, well, at least environmental for a day, maybe not climatological, but maybe, disaster that essentially wiped out peaches along the eastern seaboard earlier in the season. So we have state agriculture with Ashley Randale represented here. We have federal agriculture represented with Scott Soars in the USDA, and then we have our federal elected official, at least for this region, Congressman Jim McGovern. The Farm Bill will also be debated at some point this year. Maybe we'll get to that in a little bit, but let's talk about what did happen over the last week. What is the USDA's response to help support some of the local farmers who may have lost their a significant portion of their crop in that frost a couple weeks ago? Scott Soars. And lean right into that microphone right there.
Should I go down like
No,
that?
you can lift it up.
Lower, right?
Lower. There you go, yeah.
Yeah, so for us, I'm with USDA Rural Development, and I'll start with who we're not. We're not the guys who put the stamp on the meat.
Okay.
We're not the guys who put the organic seals on the egg cartons. We're the agency that does home financing, community financing, as well as work with rural businesses like farms to help develop farms. Our sister agency, Farm Service Agency, who's not here with us today, they do a lot of insurance programs, and they actually have a disaster declaration process that is engaged when things like the frost happens, that gives relief to the farming community that otherwise wouldn't be available to them.
Was it engaged in February when the first frost happened?
It was. So there was a recent disaster declaration. It's different than the broader governmental disaster declarations, but it's specific to providing relief to the farming community. So there was one in February. And in fact, it's no surprise to folks that we're seeing these more and more frequently. So coming back to my agency, one of the things that we do, and it's in large part thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act and new solar renewable projects, energy projects. In fact, Barstow's Dairy Farm, not far from here, big anaerobic digester project. We finance things like that help get at more alternative renewable energy resources that help mitigate climate change and climate impact.
Is there a similar emergency declaration that happens on the state level? Ashley Randale, the commissioner of MDAR, which is my favorite Star Wars planet in the Mustafar system.
So typically what happens with the process is farmers will go to their county FSA offices, and then their
And FSA is?
Farm Service Agency. And when they go to those offices, then the state FSA office will work with USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, to do the declaration. But we are currently across the region meeting as state commissioners because there were so many widespread impacts to see if state disaster aid can be provided.
So then the other piece of the puzzle here, we've got the commissioner of Massachusetts Department of Agriculture, we've got our rural commissioner for the USDA, and then our elected official, Congressman Jim McGovern. What's your role and your office's role when something like this happens locally to our farmers?
Well, usually farmers call me, but then I call Ashley and I call Scott to get guidance as to what I need to do. Look, I grew up in a city. I grew up in the city of Worcester. And as redistricting occurred 10 years ago, I inherited a great deal of Western Massachusetts and a lot of farms. I got to know people like Wally and others, and I admire and respect what they do. They work awfully hard. And I've come to appreciate that agriculture is an important part of our economy here in Massachusetts, and sometimes we take it for granted. So my job is to be a cheerleader for our farmers, to connect the dots, and to make sure in Washington, when we have a farm bill, that the funding is going to things that will actually help farmers in Massachusetts and not the big agribusinesses in the Midwest. So that's what I do.
Well, I want to... Oh, go ahead.
No.
Please do.
No.
Okay. I want to talk more about the Farm Bill. I think we're going to take a little break here, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about the Farm Bill. We'll talk about a little bit more farmer tragedy, sadly, with Wally Czajkowski, but about how tight-knit the farming community is here. And it'll go to show you, I think, why a celebration of our agricultural community via the means of asparagus at this Asparagus Festival is an important thing to do. It's also an important way to support your public media with New England Public Media, live from the Asparagus Festival on the Hadley Town Common with asparagus farmer Wally Czajkowski, Congressman Jim McGovern, Scott Soars of the USDA, and Ashley Randale, the commissioner of MDAR, as well as Khalees Smith and me, Monte. We'll be right back, live from the NEPM Asparagus Festival You're listening to the Fabulous 413.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413, live from the NEPM Asparagus Festival. I'm Khalees Smith. I'm here with Monte Belmonte, and we are here with Representative Jim McGovern, Ashley Randale from MDAR, and Scott Soars of the USDA, as well as Wally Czajkowski, one of our favorite asparagus farmers.
I say it as asparagus in his honor.
I kind of want
all
to
the
change
time.
it in my vocab to say asparagus because I like it. It's better to say. It feels nicer.
There are all sorts of, I want to talk to our word nerd about this, about the evolution of the word asparagus, which I heard came from sparrow grass, that we then just hybridized into this word asparagus, sparrow grass. That'll be better suited for a Wednesday conversation with Emily
Yes.
Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam-Webster. We'll see. Wally, being a farmer is never easy. Year to year, it can all be different. We've heard already about the frosts this year that affected a lot of different farms. Luckily, not a bad year for your most famous crop, asparagus. But there has been, and I should mention too that you're one of the chief boosters of this festival when it comes to the actual asparagus. There'll be a bunching competition here right after this show that you can witness and participate in. That will be judged by whom, Wally?
It's going to be Esteban Pacheco.
Oh, cool.
And where does he farm?
Oh, he helps us at our farm. He's from Puerto Rico.
Nice.
Nice.
So there has been a couple of recent tragedies in regards to the farming community right here in Hadley and then right across the border in Amherst even last night. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
First, I'm going to correct a mistake you.
Uh-oh. Is it because I called it asparagus once?
No.
Okay.
It is pretty easy farming. We get to be outside. And no matter what the weather, it's still better to be outside than inside. So,
I'm a confirmed indoorsman, so I'll take some umbrage with that. I like outdoors in small doses.
okay.
Like medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this has been a bad 10 days for this area. Tommy Phil died in a tractor accident about a week ago. He lived just up the road here on West Street. And it's really tragic. It is. It was just one quick second of inattention, maybe, and he got run over and died.
It's a huge tragedy.
It's a huge tragedy.
And his family farm was big into the Hadley asparagus as well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the Phil family is an incredibly tight family. But they're married into the Boisvert family, which is another farm family in Hadley. And then they're married into the Pipchinsky family, which is another farm family in Hadley. So basically, you have all of the farm families in Hadley hurting because of Tommy's death. And his father is the one who normally does the bunching contest, but he just isn't in the mood. The funeral was yesterday.
Well, we honor his memory and we honor their family and we extend our condolences to them because they are and have been a big part of the farming community and this festival in years past.
On the bright side, his sons are just going to continue the farm, so that's all good.
Another triumph out of tragedy story in regards to showing you how tight-knit the agricultural community is here in Western Mass, and I'm sure elsewhere too, is what happened last night at a farm in Amherst. You want to tell us that story?
Yeah. The J&J Waskevich farm was struck by lightning yesterday late in the day, and they lost their 2 barns, the packing area for their vegetables when they grade potatoes, and then part of the house even was lost. They had quite a few cows, but luckily not a single cow died. They were all outside. But I think the most amazing thing about this, Monte, is at 10 o'clock last night, Maple Line Farm, Allard Farm, Divine Farm, and probably a few others I didn't even see or hear about, were loading cows in the dark, taking them back to their own farms to feed them, water them, and milk them today. That's just amazing.
And the word spread in the small community, and they just came to the rescue at a moment's notice.
They just came. And that I find amazing.
Ashley, you grew up with dairy. It just seemed like pretty typical of dairy farming community. Like,
I will say that the dairy community really is a tight-knit community, but also the Western Mass farming community is very tight-knit, and when anything like this happens, everyone's always willing to help one another and step up at a moment's notice. And fortunately, we saw that last night. And as Wally said, with no cows or people being injured, that's always the biggest concern. So that was very fortunate. And now it's just working with the family as they look to the next steps of what the process of rebuilding or continuing on is.
We are at the NEPM Asparagus Festival, the fabulous 413, with me and Khalees Smith and Ashley Randale, the Commissioner of the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources, Scott Soars from the USDA, Congressman Jim McGovern, and our co-host for our special show here live, asparagus farmer Wally Czajkowski.
It is fun to say, try it yourself.
Yes, it is fun all the time. Congressman Jim McGovern, this past week, and even just yesterday, Congress has finally passed the debt ceiling exclusion. The debt ceiling will be lifted, averting an economic crisis, not just for this country, but also potentially for the globe. The Farm Bill will also be debated, we hope, this year. A lot of what went into the debate regarding the debt ceiling raising had to do with SNAP, Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, food stamps, which is something that we've talked frequently about over the years in regards to supporting people to make sure they have enough to eat. Is this a good thing now that this conversation has ended with SNAP? And will the Farm Bill be easier to negotiate now that SNAP may be off the table in regards to that debate? Or do you anticipate that we will have to re-debate SNAP and people's assistance, food assistance for the Farm Bill itself?
Well, it hasn't ended, unfortunately. And,
That's what I was
and
gonna
Speaker
say.
McCarthy, right after the vote, said we're just beginning, and the Farm Bill, we're going to cut SNAP even more. We're going to apply work requirements to mothers with kids as young as 7 years old. Look, the deal that was struck averted a catastrophe, but it was a lousy deal. And all the sacrifices to balance the budget are aimed at the most vulnerable in our country. And that's just wrong. And as Scott will tell you, some of the cutbacks in discretionary spending will impact directly USDA and the ability to support a lot of local farmers here. There'll be less money coming to the state, coming to farmers, not just here in Massachusetts, but across the country. But we should never, ever be in a situation where we compromise benefits for people who are struggling in this country. We are better than that. I'm grateful to President Biden for making an awful deal less awful. But at the end of the day, I voted no. I want to send it back and to drop these egregious provisions that are targeted at the most vulnerable in our community. And by the way, also a tax on monies going to combat climate change. These weather patterns that we're seeing here are not just happening out of the blue. They're happening because our planet has a fever. We are now having extreme weather patterns where farmers one year have droughts and the next year have torrential rains. We have these incredible storms like we saw yesterday. It's not happening by accident, and we got to wake up. We got to do something now.
That's Congressman Jim McGovern, our regular Thursday guest. You can always send in a question for the congressman.
Please do.
Yeah, the Fab413 at NEPM.org. We're also joined by USDA Commissioner Scott Soars and the Commissioner of MDAR, Mass Department of Agricultural Resources, Ashley Randale. We've talked a lot about doom and gloom in regards to farming at this celebration of agriculture in this first half of the show. So we have also heard some stories about how the community really rallies around itself, which I think is really positive. This celebration of asparagus is an example of that. I want to know from each of you, we already got Congressman McGovern's favorite way to eat asparagus. Grilled, salt, pepper, Laugoma, spicy chili crisps. Scott Soars, favorite way to enjoy asparagus. Sorry, asparagus.
Asparagus. I enjoy asparagus wrapped in bacon on the grill, a little bit of olive oil, and just grilled up. Just perfect. Yeah.
There we go.
Bacon from Pekarski's.
Bacon from Pekarski's.
yeah.
Shameless plug. Do asparagus and your oysters pair well?
I have not tried that yet. But I guess it would, because if you use a puree, a little reduction, put just a drop of it on, it's very subtle flavors on both sides. But I think if you blend it, it would be a good pairing.
Why not grill them both together? Grilled oysters are delicious.
Well, oysters grow in one place, and asparagus grows in another, and the two shall not meet.
It was at this festival last year that you introduced me to a term that I had never heard before. I am a wine snob. We have a wine Thunderdome on our show.
We're about to have
We're about to have one live here at the Asparagus Festival for NEPM, at the Hadley Town Common in a little bit. But terroir means the placiness from which a wine is grown. The schist soil that we tasted on the radio the other day made Vino Verde taste much different than the granite soil. When it comes to your oysters, which you grow where again, Scott Soars?
Padenarum, Dartmouth. So Upon-a-Gansett Bay, South Dartmouth, Massachusetts.
UMass Dartmouth grad, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
There is a term in regards to where oysters are grown that you introduced me to at this very festival last year, and that is?
Miroir.
So like terroir, the placiness of earth.
Yep.
Miroir,
Yep.
the placiness of the water.
Does
Correct.
that affect mussels too, or just oysters?
To some degree, but mussels that you don't have the raw, you don't eat those raw. So with oysters, because they do pick up the flavor of place, although they're all virtually the same species, eastern oyster, you can have all different varieties. So if you go to any oyster place, if you get Wellfleets or Barnstables or Padenarum Oyster Farm oysters, they all pick up a little bit different flavor. And like wines, seasonally they're also impacted based on how much rain we have, how much sun. So they're very much influenced by where they grow and how they're grown.
Ashley Randale, the new commissioner of the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources, local person growing up here in the 413. Favorite way to eat asparagus?
So I would say grilled asparagus is my favorite, but if I'm feeling a little fancy, we'll do it with Parmesan cheese, prosciutto, little drizzle of olive oil, and a little lemon.
Nice.
Khalees, we haven't asked you what your favorite way to eat asparagus is.
Not overcooked.
I like that. First bunch of asparagus that I get every year, I always get at least two because I know at least most of one is going to be eaten raw on the way home.
Yeah.
So there's something very special about raw asparagus too.
Shaved with lemon, like cure it really quick for like half an hour with a little bit of salt, and then toss it in any vinaigrette. It's the best.
We are live at the NEPM Asparagus Festival with the fabulous 413 and Ashley Randale from MDAR, Scott Soars from USDA, Congressman Jim McGovern, and our co-host for this special episode from Plainville Farm here in Hadley, Wally Czajkowski. More live, including a wine Thunderdome, a beer tasting. We were going to do a pizza quest, but the line was too long for Vegan Pizza Land, so I don't think that's going to happen. But we'll be back
We'll
with
get
you.
to them eventually. Too many of you have recommended it.
Yeah, we'll be back with you in just a minute here on the fabulous 413 on NEPM.
Welcome back to the fabulous 413, taping live from the NEPM Asparagus Festival. I forgot where I was for a second. I don't know how.
Happens to
Everything's
me all the
covered
time.
in asparagus.
It is a great festival. It's a great way to support New England Public Media. I've been a big fan of this festival before I was employed by New England Public Media, and many of the things that I've enjoyed most about it at the festival have had to do with food and beverage.
Yes.
Did our co-host Wally Czajkowski leave?
Oh, I
Asparagus
think
farmer Wally Czajkowski?
I did say everyone was off the hook, and that didn't mean Wally, but I think our wires might have gotten crossed.
Oh, all right. Well, we'll try to get him back. Wally Czajkowski from Plainville Farm is the person who brings all the asparagus to this festival. And if you're here live, you will enjoy an asparagus bunching competition right after this show. We'll tell you how it goes next week on the air on the fabulous 413. But there's all sorts of great food trucks and food here, as well as beers and wines. And if you've listened to the show since its inception in February, we have done a Wine Thunderdome weekly where we take two wines and we,
2 wines enter, 1 wine leaves.
a la Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. It is now officially the Tina Turner Memorial Wine Thunderdome, who sang the iconic song from Mad Max Beyond
I'm
Thunderdome.
so glad we don't have to listen to me butchering it today
You don't
because
wanna
we were
sing
out
it?
here. No.
You don't want to sing it live now?
No, I'm not warm. That's for later.
Lee Smith will be playing with the Soul Magnets here on the Signature Sound
For
stage
anybody who's here real late, you'll get to see me sing maybe.
at 5:30. But we thought, given the fact that we have all of these wonderful folks right in front of us here at the tent, that we would do a Wine Thunderdome live.
Indeed.
And joining us from Black Birch Vineyards,
Michelle.
Michelle, what's your last name, Michelle?
Kersbergen.
Okay.
That's a
I'm not
mouthful,
gonna say
yeah.
that one again. I'm going to make you say it every time. I've got Czajkowski down like this.
Thursbergen?
Well, yes, I had to add that complexity to the name there. So Kersbergen. It actually
Kersbergen.
translates to cherry mountains. It's a Dutch name.
Cool.
Kersbergen.
Yes, Kersbergen is the proper pronunciation. So Kers is cherry, Bergen is mountains. So
I'll
that's
just
what
try
I-
to make a mnemonic device that when Murphy Brown ended, I had to curse Bergen because that show was so good it should have never ended. Candace Bergen.
Everyone has questions for you right now.
I just,
Everyone.
I know. All right. So Michelle, you are from Black Birch Vineyard. Tell us about where you're located and what you're growing there, what you're vinting there. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, yeah.
Where you were originally
Winemaking.
located too, because you were in
We were in
West-
Southampton
originally,
originally.
and then you
Yep.
moved to
We-
Hatfield.
We moved to North Hatfield back in 2017, and we planted 12 acres at that time, or just under 12 acres. We've since grown it another 5-6 acres in 2021, so we have about 18 acres under vine currently. The first planting we did, we grew, we planted 10 varieties. For whites, we planted Riesling, Chardonnay, Traminette, Gruner Veltliner. For reds, we planted Pinot Noir, Blaufränkisch, which is also known as Lemberger. Let's see, Marquette, Chalaw, Frühburgunder, and Cab Franc. So, yes.
Now, some of those grapes may be grapes that people have heard of, maybe Cab Franc, Pinot Noir,
The two Austrians in there.
Riesling.
Good
Yes,
job.
yes. Cooler climate. We're cooler climate. so-
Traminette. All of those are names that may not be as familiar to wine drinkers. Tell us about those grapes, where they came from, and why they work here in the 413, which is establishing itself as a wine region, but may not be the first region that jumps to mind when you think of wine.
No, so we're a cool climate. Traminette, for example, which is one of the wines I have here that you'll be trying. It's actually developed out of Cornell University, originally University of Minnesota, but since then Cornell was the one who they took it a next step further. And it is actually similar to a Gewürztraminer. So one of the varieties that they had developed this Traminette from was Gewürztraminer. So it has a lot of similar characteristics. But these are cold. This is a cold, hardy variety. So we get cold winters here. It has to withstand colder temperatures. It's also a later budding. So when we have late frost and freezes like we do here in New England, it was actually one of the varieties that actually did okay, thankfully, out of our 18 acres. And it's also one of the later varieties that ripens. So again, it's kind of just meant for this cooler climate. Also less prone to disease, which is where you have a pretty humid climate here in the summer. It's not generally dry, so it's not prone to some of the diseases that Pinot Noir or Cab Franc can get.
Were you also hit by the frost in May?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
We probably lost 60 to 70% of our yield this year. So
And again, I don't mean to be the prophet of doom and gloom in this celebration of local agriculture.
And on that note, let's drink
maybe
wine.
we should say Thunder Doom, not Thunder
Oh,
No, we're
Because-
trying to encourage like the uplift
Luckily,
here.
so far, we have always liked both of the wines, but we are just making it so that we have to choose one.
Right.
Which of the grape varieties were most impacted? You mentioned Traminette. It was developed to be resistant to our type of climate. What ones did not do so well because of our type of climate?
I mean, mid to late May, most of our vines are leafed out in some stage. So Marquette is usually also cold hardy variety. It's early. Has the earliest bud break and had the most development, so that actually was impacted the most because it was furthest along with their bud break, and that's basically where the fruit develops. So that's all that primary growth got damaged for the most part. But it was very random. It was very strange. I mean, we had, I think, about average 26 degrees at the vineyard that night.
Well, I'll say that if there was ever a year that you were hoping to support local agriculture and your local farmers,
This is the
this
one.
is a good year to be doing it. I can't encourage you specifically to do that, given the means of the constrictions of public media. However, think about that.
We're not saying specific
There are-
farmers.
There are many ways to support local agriculture. I will also say this public radio station is, in its own way, like a farm share, and it will go away if you do not support that as well. So this is two things. If you believe in them, we encourage you to support, and you can support local grape farming at Black Birch Vineyard and local vintning with the wines that they make there. Michelle Kursbergen, you have brought two wines. Two wines enter.
Yes.
And one wine we will choose to be our favorite. We also have another, I'm going to say an expert taster with us from Loophole Brewing. Introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Goulet with Loophole Brewing.
We're going to talk to you and taste your wares in a little bit. And you have some exciting news for right down the street from
Which
where,
I'm so
where we are
psyched about.
broadcasting from. But first, we're going to, would you taste with us as well, Jeff?
Of course.
Okay, excellent. You do make alcoholic beverages for a living, so I figure you'll be somebody who will have a professional opinion on this. What's your role at Loophole, for those who might not?
I'm one of the co-founders. I handle a lot of the marketing, the social media, and ideas for different wines. So I like to drive our brewer crazy.
Somebody's got to do it.
You've done some really fun things with your beers, though. Like you have a orange honey blossom that is real fun to find. And I'm always encouraged when around my local stores, which have terrible, terrible beer variety. I'm calling out all of the liquor stores in my neighborhood for having just like absolute garbage variety. But when I see yours on the shelf, I get real excited.
I appreciate that.
No problem.
All right. What should we start with first, Michelle from Black Birch Vineyard?
I would probably do the rosé, which is dry, and it's made from Cabernet Sauvignon.
That's a grape people know about. Is this one of the grapes that you are growing, or is this something you brought in? A lot of
this we do source probably about 60% of our fruit from the Northeast, so primarily from the Finger Lakes or from Long Island. So this Cabernet Sauvignon, these grapes that we actually went down there ourselves, helped harvest, brought them back, processed it in North Hatfield at Black Birch Vineyard. So that's from Long Island.
Go ahead, Khalees. What do you think?
It's got a lot of acid and a little minerally, but it's like strawberries on the nose.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty intense. We have not made a rosé from Cabernet Sauvignon before. We've usually made it out of Cabernet Franc. Just in this instance, last year in 2022, we weren't able to get the Cab Franc that we normally do. So a lot of intense flavors. I actually think this particular rosé, if it's just slightly warmer, really brings out those flavors. It's got a lot of intense fruit like raspberry. I get raspberry. I get grapefruit. I get probably a little bit of cucumber in the palate.
I get that.
Cucumber,
A little earthiness there.
I was going to say cucumber.
Yeah.
And
So
for the uninitiated wine listener right now, there is no actual cucumber. No cucumbers were damaged or injured in the making of this wine.
Or bruised.
No raspberries, no strawberries, none of the other peachy, fleshy,
I know there's
type
some
thing.
enterprising person out there who wants to make cucumber wine, and I'm just here to say maybe don't.
Yeah.
do
Thoughts on
that.
this, Jeff Goulet from Loophole?
Yeah, I'm just thrilled to death that I pulled cucumber out of there. Yes.
Nicely done, sir.
I know, not
But
typical.
nice little hint of fruit, too, and
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
refreshing.
Not typical of. I mean, like I said, Cabernet Sauvignon is not our typical rosé grape variety, but we're pretty happy with it. And 2022 was a pretty dry year, so that's where you're getting a lot of those intense flavors from.
We're doing a Wine Thunderdome live from the NEPM Asparagus Festival. Let's taste wine number 2 with Michelle from Black Birch Vineyard here in
So-
our fabulous 413.
So the next one you're trying is the Traminette. This is actually fruit sourced from the Finger Lakes. It's a 2021, so it's a year older. And if you remember, or maybe not, I mean, we think about our growing seasons all about weather. 21 was a wet summer. July and August was really wet. Even in the Finger Lakes, they had a lot of rain. There's a lot of nice acidity in this, a lot of lychee. Traminette is known
That's
for
what I was going to say.
lychee.
It smells like lychee.
Wine
Yes.
snobs love to talk about lychee
Yes.
or lychee nuts. To me, it always manifests itself in a little bit of chlorine from a pool, and I don't mind that. Again,
I don't know about
chlorine
that one.
Or actual lychee nuts.
These
We're
are all things
injured
that he likes. He's
in
like,
the
I want to
making
drink
of the
diesel. I
comment.
want to drink
I like
funk.
diesel.
Bring me to
I like
Barnes.
Stinky human pheromones.
the walls.
After gym class, like those are all the things I like in wines.
Well, the description says 3 cheers for lychee, so
Yes.
that's the first sentence on the back of the bottle.
Yes.
But there's some nice green apple notes, quince, a lot
Yeah,
of
Quince.
yeah, a lot of good notes there. And then there is residual sugar in this one, just because it has a lot of acidity. We like to try to balance it out and add some residual sugar to balance that out, so you get that touch of sweetness.
Yeah.
And it's a fuller bodied white too, and it's really very food friendly, so it goes great with asparagus. Actually, both of them would really work well with asparagus. So if you're making those dinners, and it includes some grilled asparagus, add a bottle of rosé or Traminette to it.
Jeff Goulet from Loophole, thoughts on this Traminette?
Yeah, lychee's one of my favorite things in the world, and I drive my brewer absolutely crazy with lychee. He's like, we're not making another lychee beer. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Have you not had lychee?
Wait, another lychee
Not
beer?
to shamelessly plug
There
them
was
again.
a first lychee beer?
You can often get lychee
Where
nuts
was I?
at Trans World Market, the same place you can get the Lagon Ma spicy chili crisp right down the street from
And if
here.
you're on their Facebook page, you can see when they get them
when
fresh.
they get the lychee nuts in. Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah,
Now-
I love
but-
lychee, and this wine is really delicious as well. And I like the fact that this stands up, whether or not you want to have some spicy Indian food, or my other favorite, like hungover Chinese food.
Yes.
This is wonderful.
Yeah, this is not going to get lost in any really flavorful foods. That's the nice thing about Traminette. It really holds up to a lot of different food flavors.
All right, Michelle Kursbergen, you are not allowed to vote on your own wines from Black Birch Vineyard, but we will now put these through the Thunderdome. Do you have a favorite? Shall I go first so as not to put anyone on the spot?
Sure.
My favorite of the two wines, my vote is for the Rosé of Cabernet Sauvignon.
All right.
A little bit less sweet, a little bit more my style, a little bit less grapefruity, and that's my vote.
I'm voting for the Traminette. It's got like upfront acid, but rounds out really nicely in a way that like this one's a little bit too peaky for me.
Jeff Goulet from Loophole
But I
Brewing,
like
who
them
we'll
both.
talk to
We're
in just a
going
minute.
Traminette lychee.
Hey, cheers!
Traminette is the
Lychee.
victor in the
cheers for
wine.
lychee.
Thunderdome live here from the NEPM Asparagus Festival. Both of these wines from Black Birch Vineyard
Both lovely.
would go excellent with asparagus, and hopefully I saw him floating around with a box of asparagus. We can get Wally Czajkowski back up here before the end of the show to talk about the asparagus bunching competition that will happen from the Signature Sound stage at the NEPM Asparagus Festival live from the Hadley Town Common. And we'll hear about some exciting news from our expert taster from Loophole Brewing coming up. But thank you so much, Michelle Kursbergen from Black Birch Vineyard here in the fabulous 413.
See, it didn't
Thank
take him
you.
that long.
No.
If I don't have your name written down and I can come up with a memory palace of way, I'm literally thinking about Murphy Brown to remember your last name.
Now you got to try it with the Dutch accent on it.
Kursbergen.
Close.
Okay.
you gotta, Kersbergen.
Kersbergen. Flauw Bruja.
It's getting better.
It's getting better. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 live from the NEPM Asparagus Festival. We will be back in just a minute. Welcome back to the Fabulous 413 live from the NEPM Asparagus Festival here on the Hadley Town Common, celebrating our 413's most majestic of crops. Legend has it was sent many times to the Queen of England to celebrate the spring festival there, and we are here celebrating it to support our public media and to support our farmers. As we heard earlier, not always easy to be a farmer, but the community rallies around the farms and the agricultural community here in the 413, as they do rally around public media here in the 413, and we appreciate supporting both at this festival. I'm joined by Khalees Smith, as usual.
Hello.
And we'll continue our conversation about drinking live on a radio show, live in front of an audience. We can't do no Irish whiskey here today from the crowd, but maybe we'll work that in later. We're with Michelle Kurtzberger from Black Birch Vineyard and with Jeff Goulet from Loophole Beer. You have an exciting project that is just about to launch.
I was so psyched to see. So I walk to work sometimes since I live up the hill from the studios, and walking down Thomas Street and saw the signs in the windows of what you're about to talk to us about. And I was like, is that real? Are you really coming? That's going to be fantastic. So
I say that to myself every day too. Is that real? Is that happening?
So Jeff Goulet, tell us what's to anticipate for downtown Springfield with Loophole Brewing.
Yeah, so just about a month ago now, we landed on a building. It took us 4 years to find it, but we got it. It's a 15,000 square foot building.
That used to be a church, right?
It did used to be a church.
I was
and
sure that was like a euphemism and it was another strip club. But I'm glad that it wasn't.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of interesting things that we found in the building.
Not strip club related, but
don't dig too deep into the basement.
But there was the third floor was like a daycare for the and make a Bible study and things. And there's all of these amazing sayings on the wall that are painted on like mural style, which will be future beer names.
I love that. Do you want to share at least one of them?
Oh, the Sword of Salvation.
Sword of Salvation.
Oh, I love it.
I want to go to a church that offers Sword of
Yes,
Salvation.
you do. You want to go to a church that acknowledges like human fallacy.
I guess so. You're right. I want to go to the church that's like, I don't know. I just like being with y'all.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, what did you bring for us to taste, Jeff Goulet?
So
We're not going to do the Thunderdome style.
Two
We're
beers.
just
I
gonna
thought I
celebrate
had
you.
3, but I am not that smart and grabbed 2 of the same one.
2 is fine.
But this is our Parapet Pilsner. It's a hybrid between a German and a Czech style Pils. Cool. Parapet is a little wall, a little bridge barrier. And, we kind of think that between the German and the Czech styles, it's just a little wall. Not much of a difference, but there is a difference. And we really, try and hone in on that European style.
Oh,
I love
that's
it.
nice.
This is really nice.
Yeah, thank you.
There's almost like a peanut brittle thing that I got right away there. It was something very savory.
Yeah,
Delicious.
It's like bready on the like that nice like almondy thing on the nose, and then it's just clean, which is what you want in your Pilsner anyway.
It's the hardest style of beer to make.
It's the beeriest
agree.
beer to drink, though, I think.
But there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you make an IPA and it's not exactly right, just shovel some more hops in and
Facts.
or
Facts.
A triple chocolate almond stout.
Yeah, you can
Add
cover a
another
multitude of
You
ills.
can hide a lot in malt and stout and porter, but it's so clean and it's brewed at such a cool temperature. Like you gotta get it right, otherwise
It's the vanilla of beer. It shows how good of a beer maker you might be, perhaps. That's like vanilla is the standard of how good of an ice cream maker you are. Let's taste your last Loophole beer here.
So this is what we call hay hook, and while we're here at the wine table, this is a barley wine.
It's a barley. What differentiates a barley wine from a beer?
So when you hit 10%, the government will not allow you to call it beer anymore.
Yes.
So it is wine, and we play on that with the barley wine.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
This is actually 2 years old.
Ooh.
And we hope that we'll have it for another year or 2.
This is
what's really remarkable with it is we load that up with hops. So when you first buy that beer, it is a crazy hoppy beer. The next year, the hops dissipate very rapidly, and the malty sweetness starts coming out. So by next year, we should have very minimal hops and a lot higher on the.
Jeff Goulet, when would we expect Loophole to open in downtown Springfield?
Well, a little bit of a dreamer, but I'm hoping for July, and hopefully brewing by September.
We're hoping to. A big thanks again to Michelle from Black Birch, Jeff from Loophole, and Wally Czajkowski, who's going to be right on this stage bunching asparagus. What makes a perfect bunch of asparagus in the 10 seconds we have left?
They got to be lined up exactly right, all the tips turned in, and you want it to look really attractive.
All right, Wally, I can't wait to see this happen live here. You won't hear it on the radio. A huge thanks from the fabulous 413 to our director, Tony, wrangling everybody and timing everything done.
Our technical team is Bart. Some kid asked me if I knew what this means. Rankin Kara likes the cabbage rolls because they're warm. Foster, Chris Swanker back at the mothership NEPM in Springfield, and Punk Rude Boy Dubé.
Special thanks to Vanessa Cirillo and the whole NEPM staff and all the volunteers that made this Asparagus Festival Festival possible. And a shout out to Marie Wechter, who poured her heart and soul into this event for many, many years. We hope to see you back on the radio tomorrow and back here at the Asparagus Festival for NEPM next year. I'm Monte Belmonte.
I'm Khalees Smith. See you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.